Good morning, Yidden. So we begin our CHAZZARAH in preparation for our test, which is going to be on Kufay 105 Taruvis, then Sadik Aleph, which goes to Basar B'chalav and Sadik Beis. The overview of all three of them, as we learned already, Kufay is the basic principle. You have to use that. The basic principle in Kufay is the principle of Tam Ki'ikr, mixing of flavors, and the various different methods that happens between kosher and non-kosher food. Sadik Aleph 91 is the same thing as Kufay, but instead of for kosher and non-kosher food, it's going to be for milk and meat. And then Sadik Beis gets the depth of, broadly speaking, what's the official title on Sadik Beis? Let's see. The official title of Sadik Beis is, what happens if milk falls into a meat pot? But what we end up getting into is the questions of Hanan in Sadik Beis. Those are the three items: mixing of flavors, kofei, kosher, non-kosher, Sadik Aleph, milk, meat, and then Sadik Beis is many details on when that mixture leads to Hanan and how to deal with that. Even though Hanan itself is going to come up in other Simanim as well. So as requested, we're going to start with an outside overview of Sadik Beis, because there's a lot of detail in there. So we're going to go through sif by sif overview. Then we'll start our CHAZZARAH, which for the next 3 weeks, God willing, we're going to do inside, reading inside, translating, and we'll go through all three Simanim. Plan is 1 Siman per week. God willing, this week I'm going to speak with the guys at Laman Yilmadu and work with them on what our test is going to look like. Because when I spoke to them, we made up that I'm going to work with them on the test, and we shouldn't just use their standardized tests. So that way we know that the tests match what we learned. Mm-hmm. So whatever in the test is covered by what we learned in our share. Right, because they have a different share. It could be that different share, and it could be they cover different points or whatever. So we want to make sure that whatever the test is matches what we learned. And given my, I know what the students are up to, what we're all up to, so I can make sure the test is commensurate to our knowledge. So details about that, God willing, forthcoming, hopefully this week. Okay, so that's with respect to the next 3 weeks, the CHAZZARAH, and the test that follows. So you can take the Basar B'chalav doesn't have Sadik Beis. You can take that, but it's not going to have Kofei though. That's fine. Is that yours? But down, there's another Shulchan Aruch down there, and all the print. Look, is there another blue folder somewhere there? Blue folder, yeah. There's a book on there. So then take it. Down at the bottom there, there's a Shulchan Aruch here. Okay, just take it though. Down middle row down. Okay. Middle row down, there's a Shulchan Aruch. Yeah, that's it. There's another set here. Somebody left it. Someone left it there? Yeah. Okay. We'll use it for now. What about it? My phone. Other side. Guys on the Zoom, if the audio isn't good, unmute yourself and let me know. I'm using my phone. So hopefully the audio should be good. Just want to make sure. All right. So Sif Aleph of Sadik Beis was the dispute between the Mechaber and the Ramah, which is, do we rely on a non-Jew to identify the flavor for us? Mm-hmm. So if a little bit of milk fell into a big stew, meat stew. So again, the primary principle is tam ki'ikr, that the flavor of the item is as if the item is there itself. So if you cannot taste the milk, then the milk doesn't exist in there, and everything's fine. So obviously a Jew can't taste that because he's running the risk of eating basar b'chalav. Mm-hmm. So you ask a non-Jew. Mm-hmm. The details of how you ask a non-Jew will come up in a later siman. But you ask a non-Jew, that's the Mechaber's view. That's the din of the Gemara. But the Rama writes that today our practice is we do not rely on our Jew. So we always require 60 to the ratio of milk. 60 to the ratio of whatever it is the Chacham's way of saying the taste is gone. That's what 60 really is. 60 is not a magical number. It's a number that tells us that the flavor is gone. Right? Now, the Mechaber will tell us that you also need 60 when you cannot identify the flavor. If the flavor is identifiable, like milk and meat, to ask a goy. If the flavor is not identifiable, then he's also going to have to concede you need 60 to tell us that the flavor is gone. Mm-hmm. How is the flavor not identifiable? If it's min bin minoi, if the non-kosher item and the kosher item is of the same substance, it's a non-kosher meat falling into meat, you can't identify the flavor. It's not possible. So then you'll have to go by 60. In basar b'chalav, you can also have min bin minoi. How so? If milk falls into meat and then it sits there on the piece of meat to the point that the meat itself becomes Hanan, and now the meat flavor that comes out of that piece of meat that had milk in it is itself not kosher. You cannot identify the flavor of meat because it's a meat stew. And the Mechaber will agree that you have to have 60 to the ratio. But in any case, given that we're following the Ramah, and I think I mentioned once that even the Sfardim follow this nowadays. Yeah, even we'll see in Tzaddik Sfardim also follow this anyway. We always go 60 to the ratio. So that is Sif Aleph. 60 to the ratio. But there's a machlekes. Maybe you can rely on Anju to tell us that the flavor is gone. But the common practice is we need 60 to the ratio. Okay. And we've been introduced a little bit already to Hanan. Because if the piece of meat absorbs the milk, and now the piece of meat becomes non-kosher, it itself becomes the source of non-kosher, not just the milk.
Right, so you need 6 times that actual piece.
So you need 6 times the actual piece of meat, because the meat itself became Hanan.
What if
that's Sif Aleph?
What if you do have 60 times the ratio, and then you taste it, because then technically you could taste it now because there is 60 times the ratio, but you taste the strong taste of it.
It's still going to be a problem.
It's going to be, I'm saying, I know it's going to be a problem. I'm saying, but
it's still not going to be good.
I'm saying, what about you now taste the lesser
color? Well, that's because Tom Kicker.
Correct. It's right. That's right.
Taste, it doesn't matter.
Yes. But 60 to the ratio, it's going to be very difficult to taste to have the flavor. If you taste the flavor of 60 to the ratio, it means the flavor didn't get mixed in properly. It's only in one spot. In which case, you have to take that spot out anyway. If you know where the milk is,
right,
you can't say, "Oh, it's bottled," but I see a little bit of milk floating in my chicken soup. It's 60 to the ratio. I'm saying I'm going to drink that spot. It's only if you can't identify where the milk is. Right. Which is the whole mixing thing that comes up in the next sif.
Right. No,
if you know where the milk is, you have to remove that. We're gonna have it a few times, right? Where the piece of meat that becomes Hanan, even though you have 60 to the ratio of that piece of meat, you still have to remove that piece of meat.
No, for sure.
Right? And the same thing with the pot. The pot became Hanan, even though the stew is kosher, you still have to kosherize the pot itself, right? We know that also because you know where the milk, you know where the Hanan is, right? So if you can taste it, it means you know where that thing is, and you don't really have batal b'shishim, because batal b'shishim only is when it's so suffused that you can't identify where it is, not by flavor and not by vision.
What if it?
Right.
What if it just has to be? What if it's like just happens to be a strong flavor? What if the let's say, what if the meat was super spicy? So
we're gonna learn.
That's what I'm trying to say is that what happens if you could taste that flavor in your thing?
Okay.
But it was like
so
a
in
of the size.
In what Siman, I think maybe Tzaddik. I think Tzaddik is going to be the laws. I think it's Tzaddik. Yeah. I believe it's Tzaddik. See,
but it will be addressed later.
Tzaddik is going to be. Yeah, how it becomes bottled. And there we're not always you have the bittul because of the strength of the flavor.
Because there are some flavors that overpower.
Correct, yeah.
Meat and milk, they're more subtle flavors.
No, Tzaddik is how it's bottled, but where's the Dinya Hanan? There's another Siman that just does with this, yeah.
I was just saying, so far we've been talking about subtle flavors, like nothing so overpowering. So
dark flavors are going to come up. I have to remember where it is.
Okay.
Oh, maybe it's Kavav. Din Hashim is bottled with Shishim.
Okay.
It's not there either. Anyway, it's going to come up, yes. The din of chada, different flavors, and flavors that are not as bottled in 60. That's going to come up.
Okay. That's all I wanted. I was curious.
Yeah.
Because
it's here, it's subtle flavor. That's correct, yes.
Okay, fine. Don't want to go off topic. I just like...
Okay, Sif Beis. This was a complicated Sif, where the Shulchan Aruch itself is not clear, and the Ramah is not clear on the cases that they're dealing with. And if you read it straightforward without qualifying what the cases are, it almost seems contradictory in some cases. So we're going to, in our overview now, we're just going to give like the bottom line halachas as we have them, without going through how the Shulchan Aruch would be read. That we've done already, and when you do your review, you'll be able to do it. But let's just give the overview of the halachas. There are really 3 cases, right? Case 1 is where a drop of milk falls into the stew itself, into the liquid of the stew, or into a piece of meat that's inside the stew, and you don't know which one it is. Let's just say the whole thing's mixed together. In that case, it's bittul b'shishim. So much so, you can make a strong case in the language of the Shulchan Aruch, and we're going to see in some of the poskim in your summaries, I'm sure it's there, that you can even mix it to begin with, to nullify it by 60. Because in that instance, the milk is not associated with any particular piece of meat. And even if it is, if the piece of meat was inside the stew, maybe that's still even fine there too, as we see in some of the commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch. And if the whole thing's mixed, you need 60 to the ratio of milk, and there's no Hanan. No Hanan happened, especially if the Ramah says if you mix it right away, or if you covered it right away, then you have Hanan all the way through. That's case 1. Case 2, let's go to the other. Yeah, you want to say something?
Yeah, can you remind me what Chanan stands for again? I keep forgetting.
Chaticha Nasa Nevela. where the piece itself becomes the source of prohibition and not just the milk that's absorbed in it. Right? Okay. More on that in the next sif. So no chanan when it's mixed into the stew itself. And therefore you need 60 to the ratio of the milk and you're all good to go. Especially if you mix it right away, if it's covered. One extreme. Go to the other extreme and then we'll do the middle. The other extreme is where the piece of meat is outside the stew.
Right, it's sitting partly out.
So it's literally outside the stew, that's for sure. But even if it's on the pot, but the liquid only goes up halfway, the stew only goes up halfway, and you have pieces of meat that are on top of it. Right? So now one of those pieces become chanan. That happened. That's one piece, one thing. So now here too, there is the case to be made that if you mix it right away,
Right.
and especially the Shulchan Aruch writes, if you mix it right away and you keep on mixing it till the end, or you covered it right away and it remained covered until it cooled down, there are seems to be more lenient that you don't have to mix it the entire time. If we just mix it at the beginning, it might be enough, and if you cover it at the beginning, it might be enough. But the Shulchan Aruch is more stringent. You have to mix it the entire time or cover it the entire time. But in this case, if you didn't do that, then you definitely have chanan on that piece of meat.
Right.
And then once it's mixed later, if you didn't mix it right away, so you gave it time to become chanan, now you need 60 to the ratio of that entire piece of meat.
And you got to remove the piece of meat.
And you got to remove that piece of meat. And what happens if you
the
don't?
first option, you don't have to remove anything. You just have to mix it all.
Because that's right, because no chanan. Like, although we're a machmir, if you know which piece of meat, we take it out anyway. That's the Rama writes. But even in the first case, if it landed on a piece of meat when it's mixed in, if you know which one it is,
you should take out the piece of meat, then mix it.
And then that's right.
Okay.
If you don't know which one it is, then it should be fine. Yeah, but there's a chumrah there to take it out as well. Okay, so in this case you had chanan because the piece is completely outside the mixture. You didn't mix it right away, and therefore it had time to become chanan. And then later it got mixed in. Now you need 60 to the ratio of that entire piece of meat, and that piece of meat has to be removed. Now, what if you cannot identify that piece of meat? So, min ha'Torah, biblically speaking, so long as you have one, just b'chlal, if you have 3 pieces of meat and one's not kosher, all of them are fine because you don't know which one it is.
Yeah.
Right? That's min ha'Torah. It's chad b'trei bottle. 1 and 2 is nullified.
Right.
We are stringent in the case of chatich aroy l'skabed. If the piece of meat is worthy of its own recognition, there's going to be another Siman to discuss the exact qualification of that. But if it's deserving of its own recognition, let's just say for argument's sake, it's enough that you would serve it on its own. It's not like little thin strips, it's a piece of meat. Then and you don't know which one it is, then any piece of meat that is of that level, royal iskabed, is worthy of being worthy of being important, you got to remove all of them because maybe one of those is the one that has milk on it. And maybe one of those is a chanan one.
Yeah.
So you got to remove all of them. And then the rest of the stew is fine because the rest of the stew is 60 to the ratio of the chanan, of the biggest chanan. Because maybe the biggest of them, maybe the biggest maybe the biggest of those pieces that are worthy is the one that's chanan, and you need to have 60 to the ratio of that one. So you have to have in the stew 60 to the ratio of the biggest worthy piece of meat. Remove all the worthy pieces, and the rest of your stew is kosher. That's the stringency. Yeah, clear?
That's the worst option.
That's your worst option. Okay, I think that's Sif Beis. What else is missing Sif Beis?
You're saying that's not the strictest
Oh, wait, the most important part, yeah?
That's not the strictest option? That's the middle option? No,
It's a stringency.
I'm saying that sounds like the strictest option. Much stricter than if you just removing that one piece of the
Right, because you don't know which one it is. If you knew which one it is, you take it out.
Oh,
you don't know which one it is, and I have to remove any of them that it could possibly be. But only the ones that are royal iskabed, only the ones that are worthy of.
Right, yeah.
Ones that aren't batal chad b'trei, ones that aren't batal 1 and 2 by rabbinic decree, because it's worthy of its own, I don't know what way, worthy of honor.
A bigger piece of meat, whatever.
But all of them that are possibly
that size,
royal iskabed, have to be removed. And then you have to have 60 to the ratio of the biggest one. Maybe that's the one that's chanan.
If you look at all of them that were removed, you look at the biggest one, it has to be
60 to the ratio of that. In the rest of your stew, and the rest of your stew is kosher.
Right. Okay.
Clear? Okay, case number 3, which is the beef of the whole case, is what happens when the piece of meat is when the piece of meat is partially in, partially out. So the meat is partially submerged in the stew, in the liquid, and partially above the stew. Very common situation you have when you're making a stew. And the milk drops onto the part of meat that's outside the stew. Question is, do I treat it like it's completely submerged because it's partially submerged, and therefore all I need is 60 to the ratio of the drop of milk? Or do I treat it like it's outside, because partially is protruding upward, and then I have chanan, I have the piece of meat itself became chanan. Now I need 60 to the ratio of the piece of meat. This is a machlokes rishonim. It's a dispute amongst the first halachic authorities in the post-Gemara era, Rashi Ri. This machlokes is mentioned in Kufay as well. So this is the case where it's not clear from the Shulchan Aruch and Ramah what they're talking about and how they're ruling. So bottom line, the way we practice, it seems like there's a machlokes between the Ramah and the Shulchan Aruch, and the Ramah is more lenient actually. The Shulchan Aruch seems to be saying that it's chanan, and you need 60 to the ratio of the whole thing. And if you want to mix it in fast enough, you have to mix it in from beginning to the end, and you have to cover it from beginning to end. Whereas the Ramah seems to be more lenient and saying, nah, even if you didn't mix it all the way in, it's still considered part of the mixture.
Okay, yeah.
But nonetheless, you still have to remove that piece of meat,
Yeah.
even though it's part of the mixture.
Just because it's possible, if it was something else, you'd be.
Okay, yes, we'll get to that in a second. Yes, we're talking about spachalav now, yeah? So that piece of meat is to take out.
Yeah.
But if you mixed it right away, maybe you wouldn't have to take that piece out. So it's not quite clear from the Shulchan Aruch and Machaber and Ramah. And the bottom line halachic ruling is we take the stringency of all. Namely, if there's 60 to the ratio in that piece of meat, of course it's nullified. Take it out, you're good. If there isn't 60 to the ratio in a piece of meat, then you have to remove that piece right away, but still have 60 in the stew to the ratio of that
Drop of milk.
drop of milk. But if you left that piece of meat in there, then it becomes hanan, and I have to have 60 to the ratio of that piece of meat and remove that piece of meat. That's how we rule at the end.
Which basically means as long as you remove the piece of meat, you're fine.
And if there's 60 to the ratio
Yeah,
of the drop of milk,
that's
if they remove the piece of meat,
definitely it.
plus have 60 to the ratio of the drop of milk.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me see. Yes.
You need to have 60 to the ratio of the entire piece of meat that's chanan, or just
Only
the
if
drop
it stayed
milk?
there long enough to become hanan. If I took it out, right?
But if you left it in, it stayed long enough to become chanan, then it's 60 to the ratio of that entire piece of meat.
Yeah.
And if you're able to grab it
yes.
beforehand, then it's 60 to the ratio of the drop of milk.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
I believe so.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense based on everything we said. It's exactly how it should be.
I believe that's correct. Okay, that was Sitbei. That was our really the difficult one to get through.
But
So Gimel.
Even
Yeah.
if it was, I'm saying, even if it was treifa, like you'd still remove it. Why wouldn't you remove it?
If what?
Like I'm saying, if something trait fell in there. You were saying for like the other.
Okay, we're gonna see because over there we're less strict on Hanan.
Yeah.
That's gonna be in Gimel. Right now.
But I'm saying, but you know, it's obvious that something trait touched it. So
No, because you have between
Not necessarily.
yeah.
Sorry? Okay, let's see. So now it's Gimel. Sif Gimel's like this. Sif Gimel gets to actually says the law of Hanan, which is when a piece of meat becomes Hanan, namely. However, in whichever case you want to take from Sif Beis, or Sif Aleph for that matter, where a piece of meat absorbed milk, and therefore that piece of meat now itself is the source of prohibition, is, as we learned, inherently a rule relegated to Basar B'Chalav. Logic is very simple. Because basar and chalab are not prohibited in and of themselves.
Right.
They're only prohibited in their mixture. So it's not, when you mix them together, it's not as if the milk is treif. The milk is not treififying the meat.
Yeah.
The mixture of milk and meat is treififying itself. So all of it's part of the prohibition, the mixture, and therefore all of it becomes a source of prohibition.
Because it becomes machmas atzma. That's
Machmas atzma.
It's
And therefore, after l'soichtoi, even if you somehow can extract all the milk,
no, you don't.
it's the meat is still forbidden because the meat
Mixed.
became a mixture of milk and meat.
Yeah.
That's the principle of Hanan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Which means, therefore, you could make the case, and that would be the Machaber's view, that Hanan does not apply to other prohibitions. So if a piece of meat absorbed non-kosher fat, so the piece of meat itself is not the source of prohibition.
Right.
It's not going to be Hanan. And if that piece of meat fell into a stew, you only need 60 to the ratio in the stew against the fat, not against the piece of meat. Because the piece of meat is not itself the part of the issue. It's absorbed an issue. In milk and meat, the meat itself is part of the issue. Because the milk and meat mixture is prohibited.
I understand.
But in the case where the meat absorbed non-kosher fat, the piece of meat is not the problem. It's a conductor of the problem. Yes, it's absorbed with a problem, but in itself is not a problem. In milk and meat, the meat in Basar B'Chalav, the meat itself is part of the problem because the meat itself is part of what makes it prohibited. So Hanan. But when the meat absorbed non-kosher flavor, it itself is not a problem. It itself is not the issue.
Right.
It's a conductor of an issue. And therefore says the Machaber, no Hanan b'shari surim. Shari surim means other prohibitions other than Basar B'Chalav. So if any piece of meat or any piece of bread or anything absorbs something that's not kosher,
you just need 60.
you just need 60 to the ratio of that non-kosher, not of the piece of meat or the bread that absorbed it.
because now that piece of meat's giving off that flavor, but it's only giving off the flavor of the amount that it absorbed. So that's why.
Correct. The piece of meat, that's one of the principles. The conductor can only do as much as that which it's conducting.
Right.
So if meat is conducting the flavor of the fat inside of it, it's not going to somehow produce more prohibition than what it absorbed.
Right.
When the milk and meat is mixed together, it's not you're producing more than the milk.
It's the whole.
All the meat is part of the
Right.
problem too. So any flavor it gives off is non-kosher flavor. Whereas when it absorbs fat, the flavor it gives off is not kosher, it's perfectly kosher. It's only the fact that it's conducting not kosher flavor that's the problem. And therefore you only need 60 to the ratio of non-kosher. That's Mechaber's view. Ramah, however, makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah.
Ramah, however, doesn't disagree with the logic, but he says we're going to be stringent, at least rabbinically. Are we clear? Yeah. I'm talking a little fast, so slow me down. It's not clear.
Now it makes sense.
So Ramah writes, I agree with the logic completely. We cannot apply, certainly not biblically, Hanan to other prohibitions. Because the piece of meat, in other words, if the issue here is tam ki'ikr, that the flavor is as if the thing itself is there, then a piece of kosher meat that gives off flavor and mixed into that flavor is fatty flavor, then which tam is the problem? Not its own tam, only a tam of the fat that it absorbed. With milk and meat, its own flavor is the problem because it itself is part of the mixture of the non-kosher.
Right.
So the Ramah will agree with that logic, and therefore Hanan by other Yisurim is not going to be biblical for sure. But nonetheless, as a Ramah, we're going to be stringent rabbinically for one of two reasons. A, because we want to keep it consistent across the board. We want to keep non-Yisurim consistent with Basar B'chalav, not so we don't get confused. One. Two is because even after the meat diffuses the flavor that it absorbed, right? So you're capable of extracting it, but nonetheless, it remains usher because in the end, it still has more flavor than everybody else. It will always have more flavor than everybody else. And therefore, apply chatichanas and That was the logic, right?
Okay. So you do apply Hanan.
Yeah.
You're saying.
Yes, because we do apply Hanan to other Yisurim. And the way I think about it is, when it comes to, let's say, a pot, you can kosherize it by boiling it and all the flavor comes out.
Right.
You can't do that to a piece of meat. You can't boil it to the point that all the flavor
No,
comes
that's
out.
why I think you should
It means
remove the piece
the
of meat.
piece of meat always remains usher. And if we don't want to have, on the one hand, the piece of meat is usher. On the other hand, you don't need 60 against that piece of meat. Too confusing. So we need 60 against that piece of meat. That's the way that Ramah, that's the one way of understanding the Ramah is chumrah. Again, it's a stringency, which is why he doesn't disagree with the Mechaber's logic. He's just adding a layer of stringency.
So no matter what, you should remove that piece of meat, though. Even if you're going by the leniency, like even if you're going 60 times
So
of.
in the Mechaber himself, we had a contradiction. Remember? Here he said that because there's no Hanan by other Yisurim, so if a little piece of fat fell on a piece of meat, and that piece of meat fell into a stew, if you have 60 to the ratio of the fat, the Mechaber here said everything is kosher, even that original piece. Because that original piece is part of the stew, that's the 60 ratio in the bottle. Whereas elsewhere, he said, you got to remove that piece of meat.
Right.
And we rule like the more stringent one, you have to remove that piece of meat.
Yeah.
We as in Sfardim. But the Ramah will say you anyways need 60 against that piece of meat, and for sure that piece of meat has to be removed.
Okay.
But here in
Tzaddik
Beis, he said that piece of meat actually reverts to being kosher because it became part of the rest of the kosher stew that's nullifying the fat.
Okay.
That's what he said here in Tzaddik Beis. But again, he contradicts himself, and we rule in this more stringent way. Okay, that's Gimel.
So it would be
clear.
Okay, so it does become Hanan.
We rule the Hanan, Ramah. Yes, but nonetheless, because it's only a chumrah. Remember, we had this principle: two chumras equal to kula.
Right.
Right. If you're taking two extremes,
Yeah.
If the reason why you're being stringent is because we're taking two reasons to extreme,
Right.
you can become, especially when you throw into the mix hefsed meruba, great loss. Right. So if it's lach balach, if it's liquid and liquid, right? So you have a meat broth and a little bit of non-kosher fat fell in it.
Right.
There's no 60 to the ratio of that fat. So the whole thing is prohibited.
Right.
And then that entire meat broth, which has non-kosher flavor in it and therefore no good, now falls into your chicken soup. Now, if does my chicken soup need 60 to the ratio of the
we said no.
fat, or 60 to the ratio of the entire
Just fat.
the entire meat broth?
Just fat.
The answer is
Hanan.
only against the
Fact.
fat.
Yeah.
Because you have two stringencies. First of all, there are people who say Chanan doesn't even apply to liquids.
Right.
And B, because it's not milk and meat, it's other Yisurim, you have two stringencies here, lenient, especially if it is Hefsim Merubah. You have great monetary loss. Right? Other cases as well. If the meat is partially in, partially out, where itself was a stringency, because we had a machlokes before, is the meat partially in and out, Chanan, and it's other Yisurim, and it's Hefsim Merubah, lenient.
Right.
Right? So even though the Ramah says by other Yisurim it's Chanan, it's only a stringency. And therefore, if you're relying on other stringencies to be stringent and your monetary loss, go lenient.
Even without the monetary loss, you said if you're relying
Okay, that's true. Pesach asked that question. I didn't have the answer because in one of the cases, the Ramah said the two stringencies is enough. In other cases, it has some Merubah. So I don't know exactly when the principles are and why sometimes the Merubah is a factor and why sometimes just two Yisurim is enough.
Have we defined great monetary loss yet? Because we were talking about it.
Okay, so the examples were given from monetary loss. One of the examples we had in one of the responses was about a bris, like the sir, was bar mitzvah maybe. A sud's mitzvah. Another example we had was Erev Shabbos.
Erev Shabbos.
You have guests coming, so you can't put up a new stew.
No, I know, but that's more like time bound issue. That's more like
that's a shas more than a hefsim merubah. You're right.
Yeah, exactly. That's like we have an hour before the event or an hour before Shabbos.
That's more shas than hefsim merubah. Yeah.
That's referring to back when they had one shechit to bring the kid, buy a cow in advance,
Right.
feed it, and bring it.
I mentioned this once. I was once by Shimush by the square down here in Montreal or by Vosner, and he shared with us a case that had come up, which was they couldn't identify. I think a non-salted meat fell into salted meat. They couldn't identify which one it was. Which really, there are principles of bittul, even though it's chazak or but anyway. But he said the bottom line was he said today does not have some merubah, almost none. Just sell all. Maybe you have some merubah would be if you buy a bris and it's going to cost you an exorbitant amount, and you don't. That's a shasat chak, right? That's merubah. But in that case, you're saying we'll just sell all this to the non-Jew. We'll shech new cows this morning. It's not a big deal. So he said the whole thing was usher. Because there's no real monetary loss. Even though it was, I don't remember the details of the case, but it was a case that the Shulchan Aruch says you can rely on monetary loss.
Right.
But he said this is not a monetary loss because you sell it to the guy and you have any.
Right. You lose 10% and we'll call it a day.
Exactly. Or barely even. What?
You don't lose anything.
Well,
you don't lose anything.
No,
you lose the profit you may have gotten by.
Exactly.
You lose the profit you may have gotten by extorting kosher.
Exactly.
Don't say that. You lose the profit you might have gotten by having a premium on kosher meat, but you didn't lose anything.
Right. There's no monetary.
You lost the potential gain of a profit.
Right. So it's not you cost you. Right.
Exactly. It's not the major loss. In the old day, when you have one sheikh in town, and if the cow isn't kosher, no one's eating meat for Pesach. That's monetary. That's a massive loss.
Right.
The whole community, no one's eating cow for Pesach.
Also, they also saved up a lot of their money to get that cow.
Yeah, everybody saved up. Everybody chipped in. The butcher finally got a cow. He shechted it. Comes to the Rav. And now that's it. No one's having meat for Pesach, and all the money they invested in that meat is gone. Got to wait till they buy the next cow. That's a real monetary loss, you know.
Right. That's what I was wondering. I'm like, because nowadays technically it's very hard.
Shas could happen. Erev Shabbos.
No, I agree.
You have no guests.
No. Shas makes perfect sense. Before an event or before Shabbos makes perfect sense. But monetary loss, I just don't see it ever really happening. Okay, you lose some money.
Right. Rabbi Vosner was saying it's very rare that it happens.
Well, so that you'd have like
that can be a monetary loss. You can't sell it.
You can't sell it, or
good point.
Or you have like.
But even if it becomes trade, what do you mean? You have $100 stew and it becomes trade, and then you have to throw in the garbage.
$100 monetary.
What's $100?
But it depends for who. Some people like a lot.
It's very good. No.
But I'm saying,
How many
some people $100 a lot.
I know. That's what I was trying to say. That's what I was trying to like make that like.
I mean, you can.
My Vosner mentioned that it's very difficult.
But this
it never happens.
Probably recent, like 50 years ago, could have been.
The story. I'm not 50 years old. This has happened.
Yeah, I'm saying.
This year, I'm like Rabbi Vosner.
No, I mean, 50 years ago, people may have been more late. Now, people, kashrus agencies become much more stringent.
Because there's no reason not to be.
I guess they become much more stringent in terms of like what's kosher for Pesach, what's
Sure. 50 years ago, you didn't have the same infrastructure of kosher, massive abattoirs that are producing hundreds of cows a week for kosher, 100 cows a day.
Yeah.
So it's not the postal. 100. How many cows a day? Massive amounts. It's not the. Okay, right. So that was Sif.
Okay.
Gimel.
So that was
that was the Dalit.
Right.
Hey,
We just wanted to know for that. So monetary loss, we don't take it into consideration, or like it needs to have.
so again.
I'm saying for this situation, do you take consideration monetary loss for stringency?
And nowadays, almost never.
Exactly. So that's why I'm saying two stringencies. I'm saying
But you can't discount
practically.
completely.
So I'm saying practically, if there's two stringencies, we go become lenient regardless of monetary
In
loss.
in a lot of cases, also.
Okay. That's
But actually, I heard, now I'm remembering, I heard from the name of Rabbi Hendel that if a Jewish woman is going to have one less egg, it's a monetary loss. Don't quote me on this, but that was
Oh.
he essentially understood, especially back then, the Montreal community wasn't necessarily so affluent as it might have been today. And a woman calls crying, that's a monetary loss. You know, my fam, because it's not out of the question, by the way, even today, but certainly 50 years ago, that are families that only had meat and chicken on Shabbos.
Right.
And for them, you tell them that this week they're not having chicken, it's a massive loss for that family.
Right.
They're not having chicken, they're not having meat for the Shabbos. They wait all week, once a week, they have meat in their child.
Right.
And this week, not having meat in their child. So that can be a monetary loss for the family. So you have to,
I just have to know this way. You're right. If you're really stressing over this piece of meat, then it could be monetary loss.
I know your shluchim for many years till they got there on their feet. Family only had meat and chicken on Shabbos. No, shluchim like that. It's not fish or eggs. That was the protein of the week.
Also, probably depend on like the level of people. Like, there's some people who like even like especially today, even if let's say Shulchan Aruch was approved, they would not want to eat. You know what I'm saying? So you get that problem as well. If like in like a religious community, you approve
that's the other thing.
Yeah.
The Rav's job is to give the confidence.
Right.
Yeah.
The Rav says it's mutter. No, the Eibishter wants you to make a bracha and eat it.
Yeah.
No questions asked. The Rav tells you it's aser, Hashem wants you to throw it out.
It's a famous story in Israel.
So the Rav tells you it's mutter, make a bracha, eat it l'shem shamayim, and elevate the sparks in that.
Previous chief rabbi of Israel, on Zion Adar, there was the case with where a bottle of milk spilled into the meat, and that was the only meat that they would get to eat for like the month. Like that was it. It was like the one time they get to eat meat this month, and they basically said, "There's no way the bottle of milk is more than 60 times the pot." He's like, "Impossible! It's going to be there." Whatever. I'm not going to go through the whole story, but he's able to basically say he was able to find that there was water in it and all this stuff.
Found the good taste.
No, he found that there was water poured into the milk. That the milk.
Nowadays we got
whatever. He basically was able.
The milk is diluted, so
he did all. He basically was able to eat that as mutter. So he said it, and no one touched it.
So no one was himself.
So he made himself a big bowl, sat down in front of everyone, made a bracha, and started eating it.
My grandfather, everyone goes to stories. My grandfather has a story when he was a kid in the war, and they're stuck in the mountains. They found a dead horse, and the Rav told them that they have to eat it. And the Rav made sure that he ate it so that he considered he's eating the meat. Because it was like the horse.
No, because that's
Growth nefesh.
He said, but he said eat it. No one ate it.
Or throwing up anyway because they couldn't stomach it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, okay. Right there. Sif Hey.
Yeah.
Sif Hey is, now we get to the issue of, is there Hanan? Now, 1 second. Keli itself, no Hanan in the Keli itself. The question is there Hanan in the flavor that's absorbed in the Keli? And therefore, the Rambam qualifies in the case of a pot that is a fleshik, which means it's already been used for fleshik. And the last time it's been used within the last 24 hours, it's Ben Yoimai.
You did all of dollars.
Yeah. And the pot is Ben Yoimai, so it's been used within the last 24 hours for meat. And now a drop of milk falls onto the outside of the pot.
Yeah.
So let's go from the end to the beginning, to the more lenient, down to the more strict. Even though the Shulchan Aruch goes the other way, because it'll be easier this way. Number one, if the pot is covered. So then we're going to consider as if everything in the pot is all mixed up because there's steam moving up and down. Assuming that the pot is hot enough that's producing steam going up and down. Right? Then, no matter where the drop of milk falls, everything in the pot is considered as one large flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, all of it can combine to tier 60 against that drop of milk.
Yeah.
Even though we may be stringent and kosherize the pot itself, because perhaps the milk was absorbed in some point more than elsewhere, and you have Hanan in that spot.
Yeah.
So maybe you'll kosherize the pot, and therefore you actually may want to open it and quickly pour it out on the side where the drop didn't fall, because the pot itself became not kosher. But nonetheless, the stew is kosher, so long as you have 60 in the whole stew against a drop of milk. Because it's closed, the whole entire thing is one big mixture. You could use the entire mixture, entire stew, 60 to the ratio of drop of milk.
Okay.
Most lenient case, which is at the end of the Ramah.
Mm-hmm.
Going backwards, a little less stringent, a little less lenient, which is if the drop of milk falls on the outside of the pot, but parallel to where the stew is. So the stew fills up halfway, and the milk drops in the bottom half. So now here too, we're going to say that because it's parallel to the stew, we're going to say all the stew is combined with the flavor in the pot to be one big mixture, and therefore, as long as you have 60 to the ratio of drop of milk, everything is kosher, even though, again, your pot might need to be kosherized. And therefore, again, dump it out quickly from the side where the drop isn't, and enjoy your stew, and kosherize your pot.
Can you leave it in there though? Because technically, your pot.
You could in theory, but better not to.
Okay.
Yeah, better not to. That's the chumrah from the Rama, to dump it out quickly.
Because it takes a few seconds to absorb. Like
Say again?
It takes time for the whole mixture to absorb it.
It does take time for the thing to absorb, yes.
Yeah, so you want.
Yeah, you take it out right away. Yes, especially since you can't mix it. Yeah, that's right. That's Mechum of the Rama. That's case number 2. Case number 3, which is the most stringent of them all, is if the drop of milk falls onto the top half of the pot, which is above the stew. So now all the flavor that's in that top half of the pot, and the pot's uncovered.
Uncovered, yeah.
So the top half of the pot, all that flavor which was absorbed yesterday, within the last 24 hours, there was meat flavor absorbed in the pot.
Yeah.
All that flavor, or potentially all that flavor, is chanan. I certainly don't know how much it is. And I don't know how far the milk goes to turn into chanan. But very likely have chanan in that, in the flavoring that's inside the top half of the pot.
Yeah.
And therefore, I do not want to pour that stew out, even on the other side, because maybe the milk went around that way, while it's still hot.
Mhm.
And the milk, the stew on the bottom will absorb from the chanan that's in the top half.
Yeah.
Therefore, says the Shulchan Aruch, wait till it cools down and then pour it out. However, says the Shulchan Aruch in Siv Vav, that was Siv Hey. Siv Vav says the custom is to be stringent, that even when it cools down, not to have that stew.
What if you take a ladle to take it out?
Now, the reason why he says not to, the reason for that stringency, at least one of them is because it bubbles up. The pot bubbles up. And therefore, it bubbles up, it could be absorbing from chanan. And therefore, I don't know if you
But if you cover it right
really
away, then you'd be that would be our way out.
So if you cover it right away, then you might be, right, what did Ramah say? It's
If it's on the bottom.
where's my Ramah? It's hey?
Yeah.
You can't go through the walls.
Sorry?
It doesn't go through the walls or the pot.
What do you mean?
The drop that fell on the outside, it comes up through the wall.
It does.
It
But
does.
It does. That's the whole thing.
So the problem is,
Covering it.
no, because the problem is if it's not covered right,
No.
the whole thing is gonna become missing. So for
No. So covering right away won't necessarily help.
No.
Maybe you cover mamash right away, maybe it would help, yeah.
It would, because then make the whole pot.
Yeah, it'll make the whole
It'd be
pot.
as if the drop instead of the top.
Yeah, yeah,
of the
yeah.
pot.
But this is the chumrah, right? That was Siv Vav. Ramah and Siv Vav, I already told you, to pour out right away when it's
What if it drops on the side and you were able to wipe it up right away? Like
we learned already in our Chazarah Lamaisa from this book that wiping it off right away won't help you because the absorption
it's
happens right
hot.
away.
It's hot. So
It's hot. It's well not on the flame. The only way that can work is
if it's
if-
the side of the pot.
if it's near the fire, that the fire would burn it off.
Yeah.
But wiping it off will not work.
Does
That was Vav. That was Hey and Vav. Yeah.
so the under bottom one? Okay, what's it called?
No, bottom is okay.
So say that again.
What's the left of the bottom overpowers?
that's our governor.
Yeah, does that over does that not have anything to do if the pot is usher?
No, but it worked. It said with
Over here, the top, the bottom is the pot,
Yeah.
and that's a drop of milk. Even if it's cold, tata over, it heats it up and makes it absorb.
And then the pot is a problem.
The pot is going to be, you have to kosherize your pot, even if the stew is kosher, yeah.
Inside also becomes bottom is the pot.
Nachamal, in which case? Give me the case.
This case, no.
Where the drop of milk falls where?
on the outside.
On the outside,
But it
opposite the
depends, top or
stew.
bottom.
Up, it falls on the outside, opposite to where the stew is, or opposite to the empty space.
Either.
It's different.
No,
It's different. Because if it falls into the pot, it's true, it's like a chanan, and the bottom heats up the milk, but you have 60 to the ratio of the milk in your bottle,
Exactly.
right? So you're right at the top govar. But the question is, do you have bittul b'shishim or not?
So there's not better position on the top.
Because in the top half, you don't have bittul b'shishim because there's chanan inside the balua of the top.
Yeah.
In the you follow? Tata gavar is a factor here. If tata wasn't gavar, then you would have never heated up the milk to the point that it was absorbed in anything. So because tata gavar, therefore you're heating up the milk and making it a problem. But the question is, do I now have 60 against that milk? That's the question. So if it's opposite the stew, then the stew has 60 against the milk.
Okay, but nothing was just, you have an empty fleshik hot pot.
Oh, if it's an empty hot pot?
Well, I'm just trying to think if the pot is what's the status of the pot at the end?
Was he using
If it's an empty,
was he
okay.
using the
If it's an empty hot pot, it was used in the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
So then that would be the exact same thing as a drop of milk going
On the
onto the
top.
empty spot,
Yeah.
which is empty,
That's bad.
and therefore you have chanan, you got to kosherize the pot.
But if the pot wasn't used within 24 hours, then all
Then
the
it's nice
flavor,
and gum.
exactly.
Negative flavor, which
Negative
we'll learn
flavor.
separate siman discussing that. Okay, that was Sif, Dalid, and Hey and Vav. Sif Zion. Here we have a leniency because there are opinions which say that there is no such thing as Hanan B'chlal when it comes to flavor that's absorbed. This whole fact that we're treating Hanan flavors is a stringency. It's one of the opinions. But there's another opinion from the Rishonim, from the earlier generations, that there's no such thing as Hanan with flavor that's absorbed. And therefore, you're in a bind. It's Erev Shabbos. You got guests. You can't reheat into the pot. You can rely on that opinion even if it fell on the open spot, which is not commensurate to the stew. And even if you accidentally pour that stew out right over the spot where the milk fell, you can still serve all that meat and enjoy, because we're relying on the opinion, very strong opinion, which says that there's no Hanan when it comes to absorb things at all, and you have 60 to the ratio of your dropped milk, and therefore even if you poured it right over that part where it fell, you can serve it to your guests, again, only in a case where you're in a bind on Erev Shabbos. That was Sif Vav. That was Sif Zion, I'm sorry. Now, the second half, now clear? The second half of Sif Zion was the Ramah's views on the question of Irui. Pouring. Yeah. This came up in Kufay, and in Kufay, the Ramah said, see Tzadik Beis, I'll tell you more about Irui. Here we are at Tzadik Beis learning about Irui. What are the dinim of Irui? So let's go like this. You have, first of all, you have Klisheni. Klisheni is only, two things to keep in mind. Number one, actually, most importantly, something we mentioned before, is the pot is considered tata. The pot is considered tata. Even though the milk might be pouring on the floor toward the pot is still considered tata because the stream is coming from the milk stream is coming from above. So the top is the pot is tata. And therefore it will heat up that milk and make it absorb. The question is, to what degree will it heat up and make it absorb? So if the milk is spilled on your counter, cold milk, and you put your pot on top of the milk, it's klisheni.
The cold is on one. The milk was there first.
Sorry, the milk was there first. It still doesn't matter, but it's only klisheni, the milk. No, sorry. If
Is the element on or not?
No, sorry. If the milk was hot. Sorry, no, in that case, for sure, the milk is tata. So, but if you have...
Cold milk?
Where are we? Sorry. Missed the place. Sorry. In that case, where the milk is poured on the floor, there's no spill, there's no stream, then the milk there is for sure tata. So if the milk is hot milk on your countertop, and you put your meat pot on top, it's klisheni.
Yeah.
So it only goes up kadei klipa. It only goes up kadei. It only goes up
A sliver.
a sliver. Therefore, your pot has to be kosherized, but your stew is okay.
Right.
Okay.
Even if your pot is boiling and hot.
Correct.
What about the countertop is
Your countertop is not discussed in the Shulchan Aruch, but I'm going to imagine there too. It's only klisheni. I don't see why it would be more than klisheni. You probably maybe have to kosherize it with irui, because maybe it's not kosher to the surface layer, and you have to do irui to kosherize it.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Right? I'm assuming we'll have to get to those halachas, but this is my educated guess.
But I mean, if it's your countertop and you put a bunch of cleaning solution on it and you wait 24 hours before touching it, wouldn't it kind of clean?
Yeah, B'chal, when it comes to kosherizing, we're machmer, and we do all those things. We wait 24 hours, plus we destroy the flavor by using solution, plus we kosherize it.
Yeah, plus go with hot water.
We do all of it, yeah. Okay. That's that case. Now the case of irui. So if the irui is coming, so you're pouring out of it, you're pouring milk. If the milk is cold when you're pouring it out, right? You still have tata govar because the pot is the bottom, and the pot of meat is hot, and you're pouring the milk onto the pot of meat. It's going to heat it up and again at least absorb to the surface layer, which means your pot is not good, stew is okay. If, however, the top is hot, the milk is hot, you're pouring hot milk. If the stream didn't break,
oh no, then it's clear. That could be clear.
then especially as the Ramah is machmer in Kufay, that causes both ways absorption. You have a real problem, and unless you have 60 to the ratio of that milk, your stew is going to be problematic. If, however, the stream broke, so it's not a direct stream, so at no point is the hot milk touching both the pot,
Pot
and the
heat
source from which it was hot, then we'll treat it like klisheni, and it only absorbs to the surface layer. Pot no good, and the stew is good.
Mhm.
Oh, that was Sif Zion. Yes. Okay, Sif Zion also had the question of the pot being closed, which we already discussed earlier. Now, when the pot's closed,
the cover.
it's all considered
This
yeah,
also
when the
talks about the cover. of
cover.
meat
When the whole,
pot.
that's right. When it's closed, the whole entire pot's considered one big mixture. We learned that
Yeah.
already. We discussed it already. Okay. Yes. Guess the halacha of
Right, so if it falls on top of the pot, it doesn't matter. If it's only 60 times
Correct.
in the pot, you're fine.
So Ches discusses the law of zeya, steam. The halacha of steam. The Shulchan Aruch just mentioned the din itself, and then Amar gives us the qualifications. So the halacha itself is that steam carries with it the flavor of the thing from which it came out of. That's the halacha. And therefore, the same halachas that apply to pouring milk into meat pot or vice versa applies to hot steam. And therefore, if you have a hot steaming pan of milk that makes its way up toward a hot pot, so excuse me. Sorry. Then the same principles of needing 60 to the ratio in your pot of meat to your milk will apply here also. Rambam qualifies. The steam has to be hot enough that when it reaches the pot, it's yatzal this boy. It's hot enough that your hand will recoil. A. B. It's got to be close enough that the steam actually rushes toward there. But if this steam is already diffusing and it's not so hot anymore, then it's not going to be a problem at all. Even though we learned in our CHAZZARAH L'maisa that you have to wipe it down, just so you don't have the actual liquid there. But it's not going to cause any absorption. It's just because the liquid is there. The liquid is coming from milk or from non-kosher, so you got to wipe it down. But it's not absorbing into the meat because it's not hot enough. Likewise, if the pots are covered,
What about
it also doesn't transfer steam. Even if steam escapes, it's covered. That steam is not strong enough to cause any absorption.
What if you had on a stovetop a pot of fish, a pot of meat, both super hot, and you open them up
On your stovetop?
on two steams?
So we learned already that I'm over here that two pots that touch each other is not a problem.
No, I'm talking about the steam. What if the steam?
The steam is not going into each other.
Mhm.
They go upward, right?
Right.
So two pots touch each other. First of all, you're talking about milk and meat, fish and meat. It's not isurim, it's sakanta. It's
Healthy.
Danger.
Danger.
And
Yeah.
we're going to learn chamida sakanta misur. In some cases, that we're going to be more strict with fish and meat than we are with milk and meat. Because in some cases, danger is even worse than isur. That's the question. That's the quote in halacha. Chamida sakanta misura. So in some cases, we're going to be more strict. But in this case, no. Because in this case, ein kli boilea mikli b'li roitav. One vessel does not absorb from another without any liquid between the two to make the flavor transfer.
What if there's liquid? The steam will create.
The steam doesn't go downward; it only goes upward, right?
But
So
the
if the
rip
outside,
will be covered in water. Anytime you open a pot, it's
there.
water dripping down. If you ever open a steamy pot, there's water that drips all over it. The water condenses into the water and drips all over it.
Two pots touching each other do not prohibit each other, even when it comes to with steam.
Okay.
That's the end of the Ramon, Sivches, and he's going to tell us more about that.
Practically, like you open your pot of cholent, there's water dripping on the side of your pot of cholent. You ever open a fresh pot of cholent? There's water dripping everywhere.
Mamish, not really. Yeah?
Yeah.
If it does,
water
it's because the steam fell off the top of your cover down. But not from the pot itself wouldn't spill over.
Maybe
Steam wouldn't spill over. In that case, the steam is already cold enough. But if it's touching, maybe. So if the two pots are touching each other, you saw liquid between them, now you have a problem with transference. But even there, we'll have to see with the laws of not by not,
Okay.
which we'll get to, what the not by not situation is. But that might be a problem. But in other cases, there are says two pots touching each other. There's no
No, because there's water.
food between them.
You never
No
you
flavor
never have a
transfer
situation
flavor.
with dairy and meat both being cooked next to each other. It's just
You
not
do.
gonna-
It's not true.
Very common because people have small apartments, which only have one stovetop.
But they're cooking at the same time.
It could happen.
Happen.
It could happen.
Really?
You have your cholent going, and then you're making.
And you make
Making
blintzes for your kids in the morning. It happens. It could happen.
It's not so far like.
And it's not. It's
I don't know.
Baruch Hashem, we're wealthier. We're getting bigger kitchens. But a small kitchen. I mean, living in Crown Heights, kitchen's the size of this table. So if you want to make a kid hot cereal and you're also making dinner that night, it's going to be two pots next to each other, right? Okay, so we're machmer. You put something in between. You make sure they're not touching.
Okay.
Because maybe there's some liquid between them that's going to make the flavor transfer.
Okay.
But SM, no flavor transfers, especially if the meat pot is covered.
I understand.
In which case, the steam doesn't transfer. Okay, that was sifches. Siftes is a din that doesn't really come up nowadays because we're not so reliant on candles and stuff like that. But the old day, they were reliant on candles, and the candles could have been made of all kinds of non-kosher fats.
Yep.
Especially actually in America, in the old day, for those who read Moby Dick.
No, easy.
Yeah, you know that candles are made out of whale oil,
Yeah.
which is mamish treif. So if it's liquidy and it pours onto a vessel, then because of the liquid stream, there is a connection, causes absorption, and you have to kosherize that keli. If that non-kosher fat oil was turned into a candle, in which case it's a solid that's dripping down, not a liquid stream that's dripping down, all you need to do is scrape it off and you're good to go. That is siftes, and that gives us a full rundown of Tzaddik Beis. And I guess we'll start Kufay on Wednesday, Beis Hashem. I'm glad we did this because it took a lot of details to go
No,
through.
I was
And
happy.
when I was preparing last night, I'm like, oh gosh, you're right. We have to do a review because I had to review myself what was going on.
Yeah.
All right, so God willing,
No, I think I understand the concept much better now.
do you think we should do, given the format we just did now, should you do the same thing for the rest of the Siman and go outside and over it, or read it inside? I think maybe read it inside.
I'll
But
try
come back
to
to Tzaddik Beis at the end, read it inside again.
outside over it was also very good. I mean, like
Like, maybe do what we just did
Yeah.
now,
that was very good.
or better read inside.
Depends on the format of the test. No?
Meaning, what? Sorry.
Let's go.
When it does. No, hold on a second. I got to qualify. So I wanted to say, you got to do chazar on your own inside.
100%.
Put yourself at least put an hour a day, a few hours a week. And the best way to do it is again, do first the summary, then the text inside, and then the visualization. It doesn't take you a lot of time, but you do all three of those,
Mhm.
it'll be good to go. If everybody's doing that, then we can keep the shirim like this outside.
Yeah, but I feel like people are not, so they
So maybe keep
Depends.
shirim inside. Okay.
It depends though. It depends.
I don't think most. I mean, not like.
We'll start Kofei inside. We'll see how it goes. And if it's more interactive with outside like this, then we'll go back to this format.
Because I felt like what we just did right now. It's also because it's fresh. We just did this.
Yeah.
That's also
So
true.
it's fresh. But I was like, I basically understood the concept much better when we did it.
Yeah.
This is
No, for
assuming that you're gonna do. I mean, which is fair. It's good. It's assuming you're gonna.
You're gonna do chazara
you're gonna do
inside.
chazara inside.
Right.
You know, which.
So maybe the Intaka will start with Kofei inside. We'll see if it doesn't.
Yeah.
If the interaction is not going well, we'll go back to this format. Okay, you can have a wonderful week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tzlach Rabba and learning.